Senator Kinski, you're ready.
All right. Welcome to this Appropriations Committee meeting, noon or 1, Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. And the first order of business for us is Senate File 66, School Capital Construction Funding. Oh, I always get ahead of myself. Thank you.
Senator Anderson.
Here.
Senator Carew.
Here.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salzar.
Here.
And Chairman Kinski.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks for that reminder. It's probably eventually another 10 years I'll get it. The bill is Senate File 66, School Capital Construction Funding, which was a joint Appropriations Committee bill, which means that myself and Senator Grew are very familiar with it. I asked Senator Hicks if he might come by and walk us through the bill, since he was instrumental in putting a lot of this together. And so with that, Senator Hicks, thank you for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, just a little background of where we got to this bill. We've seen a number of appropriations and capital finance bills, and part of it was to try to figure out how we can increase our returns on our investments, and how do we use our accounts better. And then if you had an opportunity to attend the state treasurer's presentation where we brought in RVK, part of it's to also decrease the complexity in the way the state treasurer funds. So this is just one in a number of series of bills with the overall idea that we want to consolidate as much funds into these accounts as possible to simplify the accounting for the treasurer's office, but also to increase transparency and simplification, because our budget, as many of you know, is not simple. And a lot of times it's not very transparent, and very few people, including many people in the legislature, don't understand how the budget works. So, Mr. Chairman, just as an explanation of the bill, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask the committee if they would pull up the flow diagram here. So, Mr. Chairman, the effect of what the bill does is it moves the revenue sources from the federal mineral royalty that currently flow into the school capital construction account, takes the revenues from the 33% of state royalties, which is the state land mineral royalties account, and takes those and all that revenue and just flows right into the school foundation program account. So that's what funds our K through 12 education program. The next one you see, where you see over there where it says revenue sources, this is the school major maintenance sub-account in the SIPA. This money we eliminate that account and that stays in the SIPA. And let me explain why we do that. That account was initially set up as the strategic investment project account. It was for capital construction purposes of state legislature buildings, whatever, and part of it was to be used. The governor can profile that, so he can look at that and say, these are our building needs, so we can actually expend money out of that for construction. It was never designed to be an obligated maintenance fund. That happened when we were revenue short. We're no longer revenue short, so that just repeals that section where they guaranteed that, let's see, 45% of the 1.25% that flows into the SIPA account, that just stays in SIPA right now. So, Mr. Chairman, if you look at that and you follow that all down to the school foundation program account, so you'll see what the effect of it is. So on fiscal year 2025 into the school year foundation account, it'll be an increase of $92.3 million. Fiscal year 2026, $44.3 million. And then we appropriate for the block grant out of the school foundation program. What it effectively does, and the reason that the JAC decided to go ahead and do this significantly simplifies the budget. You're going to have one account right now for school finance, and that's the school foundation program account. So the legislature will write one check, and that will include everything for the funding the model. It'll fund school capital construction. school, all major maintenance. And you're going to have one bill, you're going to write one check. And if the bill is insufficient, if you don't have enough money in the account, you do what we do right now, that we did in the last biennium. We took money out of the LSRA to backstop the school foundation program. So effectively, what you do is you have a checking account and a savings account for school finance. Mr. Chairman, that's all the bill does. Simplify, increases transparency, our education finance system. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, if we're going to eliminate all those school capital construction, et cetera, why is there still 47 million in it fiscal year 2024? I see the others zero out, which I would assume that the SCCA would zero out also and go to the SFP.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think I follow the question. So that was the ending balance in 2024. These transfers don't take place until July 1st of 2024. So that money would actually be transferred at that point in time. We can't just get rid of it in the middle of a cycle right now. So the effective date, I believe, on these transfers is July 1st of 2024. And that's to allow what we've got in construction and the process that we've got set up to kind of taper out and then transition. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see in footnote 4 of the chart that in 2022, looks like in the budget bill, we transferred all the revenues already in the school land mineral royalties account and the school major maintenance sub-account to the school capital construction account for fiscal years 23 and 24. So why did we do that last year? And how does that connect to what we're doing now? I mean, I can obviously see that it's another consolidation of the school capital construction account into the school foundation account. Why are we piecemealing it out?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't catch the last word.
Why did we do what we did last year in 2022? Why didn't we just do this then?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
the simple answer, that's the Rube Goldberg machine that the legislature had created. This combination of different funding sources, a state land mineral royalty account that's been used for different purposes. Now we put a legislative caveat on there that that's going to go to construction, and the school capital construction account has various sources of money. Again, we did that because that was in the budget to fund our school capital construction cost. And we had transfers out of the LSRA to do that in the current budget cycle we have to fund in the school capital construction account. And I believe there's also a guarantee out of the budget reserve account that we pulled $83 million from last year to go towards major maintenance. That's the problem that we're trying to get here, is this complicated, this account here, this is guaranteed over here, this tips into here, is to try to simplify it and make it transparent. But this is the system that we had a year ago when we passed a biennial budget. And I think it gets back to Senator Anderson's question. This would transition into the next biennial budget, and that's why we're still using this current flow. So again, the effective date of these transfers, most of them is going to be in 2023 or 2024. I don't know if that answered your question or not, Senator Nethercott, but.
Follow up, Senator Nethercott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. These are just general questions for how it works. Are all of these funds currently are located, they're sub-accounts in the SIPA, correct?
No.
No.
Madam Chairman, or Mr.
Please.
Chairman, Senator Nethercott, the school capital construction account is its own account. The school land school land mineral royalty account is its own account, and they're all parked out here. They each have their own account, and then we appropriate out of those accounts, and then some of them have backstop with guarantees, but each one of those, so those mineral royalties that are currently coming off those state school sections go into this account, and then we appropriate out of them. Same thing with the school capital construction. You can see it used to be those were co-lease bonuses. That's what funded most of our school capital construction. Those are zero. So the only thing we have left in that account is the federal mineral royalties that we have obligated for school capital construction. We're not changing those sources of revenue. We're just running them right straight to the school foundation program instead of having that intermediate step in the school capital construction account.
Before I go to Senator Grew, I want to make sure that you have any follow-ups, Senator Nethercutt. Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, I just want to make sure I'm following it too. The reason why, if you go to that SFP account, the reason why in 2025 it has 92.3 million and in 2026 it has 44.3 is that SCCA balance that's up there. That 47 million flows over there. So it's not like it's a dropping thing. It's just the reason why that number's higher is because you're pulling that number down, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Those are based on Craig forecasts.
Right.
So remind me, Senator Hicks, the SCCA, in my mind, is bankrupt. Essentially, there's no COLIS bonuses, but we got FMRs rolling into it still. Are those to be exhausted, or are those still going to keep coming in?
So, Mr. Chairman, I had a hard time on your last.
The
Speak into the microphone, please.
the FMRs in the school capital construction account, those are still flowing. The COLIS bonuses are done, but the FMRs are still flowing.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. So those federal mineral royalties will now, we eliminate the school capital construction account.
Okay.
So that intermediate step goes away. They just flow right now into the school foundation program account.
And then Senator Hicks,
It's a direct flow now.
and then after we do this, school capital construction is going to come out of the school foundation program.
That's correct.
Okay. On the upper right-hand box, we maintain this flow from SSMS to SIPA. Why not simply flow the spending policy under 1.25% of the previous 5-year average market to the SIPA, 45% of the 1.25? Why don't we just direct that straight into the SFP rather than routing it back through the SIPA? I'm curious.
Mr. Chairman, what this bill will effectively does, it eliminates the school major maintenance accounts in SIPA. So there won't be any flow. It just stops in the SIPA. So, and again, that was the purpose of SIPA, was not to fund major maintenance. It was strategic investment projects account for state construction projects, not for major maintenance. And so if you remember, that's an amendment that the House Appropriations Committee brought. We concurred with it. We thought it was a good idea to put SIPA back to what it was originally for. We're still going to backstop the school foundation program with the LSRA.
So Senator Hicks, then, going forward, the SIPA will not be flowing money to major maintenance. We'll simply be paying it out of the school foundation program and making up the deficit from the general fund. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, with the exception, it wouldn't necessarily be general fund. It would come out of your rainy day account out of the LSRA.
Okay, so if I, just to follow through, on footnote 3, that 45% of 1.25 is going to go away. There's 45% of 1.25 flows into the school major maintenance. That's just completely going away, and we're going to backfill construction from somewhere else.
Mr. Chairman, that current 45% of the 1.25%. So on the general fund side of the ledger, on the PMPF, that 1.25% comes out of the general fund and flows into the SIPA account, and it sits there. Then what we did is we say, well, 45% of the 1.25% was dedicated to the school major maintenance account. So the 1.25% on the general fund still flows into SIPA. We're just not grabbing that 45% of the 1.25% and running it into the school major maintenance account. Mr. Chairman, I think this discussion highlights the need to try to simplify this.
Absolutely. So go ahead, Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything else unless there's any questions.
Senator Anderson's got a question.
Mr. Chairman, so then what do we use the SIPA for? The SIPA gets 1.25 of that 45%, and it sits in there, and I see it's building, not very much, but at least it's building from 25 to 26. What do we use it for?
Mr. Chairman, historically, what the original purpose was for large construction projects that the state had, and when they set that up, I believe in 2016, so it's a relatively new creation of the legislature. The governor is allowed to profile it out of that. So right now, a lot of the money that you're going to see in the CapCon bill that you guys take up later this afternoon is going to come through the SIPA. So that will be most of the source of that capital construction money is going to be the SIPA account.
Oh.
So that's kind of I would say the primary account for CapCon. And then over the years, it's been rated for a multitude of purposes, but that gets back to more what the original intent was.
Thank you.
So Senator Anderson, SIPA is just one more coffee can. When it started out, it was strategic investment something account and projects, and the intent was like you're going to build a huge business park like the Heartland project, like the governor wants for these big Natrium projects. And then it morphed into, let's use it to build state buildings. And then that morphed into, let's just use it to appropriate for stuff we want to build. It could easily go away. We haven't been able to do that. And then Senator Nethercott on footnote 4, the key there is, and Senator Grew and Senator Hicks, you can help me out, is it's section 300C. This is one of these, since there was not enough money in the school capital construction, the battle was how do we get the money in there? And so we had these battles back and forth since clear before the Jonah Center with these 300 notes as to how much money gets directed from where to where else to take care of the schools as the schools' fortunes sort of sank. And ultimately, we make up the deficit out of the general fund. And so this is and so what you see in 2022 is all that money transferred into this SCCA, but all the accounts still stayed in existence. And so this is just acknowledging reality. If we're going to empty these out for school construction, let's just get rid of the accounts and dump it right into the school foundation program. Did I have that about right? I know it's hard to believe when you look at this, how this ever got this complicated.
Mr. Chairman, it was an evolutionary process, but it is a sole creation of the legislature. But as different circumstances evolved, when we had billion-dollar surpluses, and particularly the co-lease bonuses. And we built over $1 billion of schools in the last decade with those co-lease bonuses. They went away. So at one time, it made sense. I don't know that it makes sense today with all of our variable revenue streams, and every time we add one of these accounts, if you go to the state treasurers, there's 15 different accounts that they have to manage and account for and administer separately. We've created this complexity in our budget. Every time you put one of these accounts and you flow money into it, it increases complexity for the treasurer's office and for the auditing and the tracking, because each one of those may have different obligations, which then has a different asset allocation. So now, as a byproduct of what we're doing, we're spending a lot of money putting folks in the back office of the treasurers. And this is a legislative device that we can start to maybe turn the rudder here just a little bit and bring some transparency and some simplification back into what we've done. But it evolved over time.
So Senator Hicks, do we have a walkthrough of the bill, or will we have that from somebody like Brian Fuller before we go out on the floor? Because
Mr. Chairman, I keep coming back. If you start walking through the bill, which we can do at your pleasure, Mr. Chairman, this is the best single explanation you're going to get.
I get that. I want to make sure when we get out on the floor that I've got a walkthrough. I'll see if I can get it from Brian, because I know there's going to be somebody want to know what these various strikes do.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, assuming it passes out of this committee, I would be more than happy to back up a member of the committee that's going to present it on the floor.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions? Further questions for Senator Hicks? All right, I'll open it up for agency comment and then public comment. Anybody online, Linda?
No, sir. No.
Agency comment? All right, public comment? Please, welcome. Good to see you. You don't get tired of committee rooms ever, huh?
I wouldn't go as far as to say that, Chairman. I've been around this place for quite a while, and probably some people might say too long. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Ken DeCarry. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Wyoming School Boards Association, and I want to talk about just the one part of this bill that really we are concerned about, and that's the part that you've been talking about, and Mr. Chairman, it's the part that you brought up, which is the repealer 94-220B. And the question would be, because it would be the number, it's the first repealer, but it's the, get to my page here, it's 9-4-220 sub B, which is the SIPA account where the transfer goes on. Mr. Chairman, one of the topics that's come up a lot recently in the legislature in the last few years about school funding is structural deficits. Well, if you don't change the structure, you can't change the structural deficit. And so some of these were ways of going about funding things that they know were needed, and so having a dedicated source of revenue. And that was the one out of the SIPA. And I'm not going to argue whether the SIPA is a good or bad. I'm just thinking the other option that you could have done on this is just do the same thing that you did with every other piece of this and just take that money and do a direct transfer to the school foundation account. And then you would know where that is, because most of that was major maintenance, which is a big part. And I think we all agree that we want to take good care of these buildings that we built, you know, so that they last as long as they possibly can. And that's the part of major maintenance. Mr. Chairman, if you'll indulge me just a second, is I smile a little bit because early on in my legislative career, the big push in the legislature was we got to empty all these coffee cans out, which we did. And then the next phase came in, and then it was we need to put up a bunch of coffee cans. We need to have this different dedicated revenue streams and put money back into coffee cans. And now we're on the next phase, which is let's empty those coffee cans out again. Mr. Chairman, the only reason I'm bringing that up is it seemed to me it would be good to have a dedicated source of revenue to do the things that we know that need to be funded. And public schools are one of those areas that we know we need to have some kind of a dedicated revenue stream. Instead of taking it out of savings or putting the money somewhere else, you know, it'd probably be better to have a direct route. Mr. Chairman, I think I'd argue a little bit that if you're going to plan on taking it out of the LSRA, I mean, a better solution would be just to direct some of that revenue right into school foundation instead of making that additional step, you know, and doing that. If you really want to simplify it, streamline it, and do that, it might be better just not to put it in there, but to put it into, you know, school foundation, knowing that we're going to have, at the end of the day, we're going to have a certain bill. And Mr. Chairman, I'm talking right now about the major maintenance part of the school CapCon account, because that's where that money went, Mr. Chairman. I know there's a lot of those other pieces that are flowing in that direction. And so, Mr. Chairman, not here to blow anything up, but, you know, would encourage you to maybe, instead of just repealing that section, changing it and putting that in the school foundation account, or back up another step, and the money that's going into SIPA now, you know, I mean, if you're going to do that, you could change that definite revenue stream. But Mr. Chairman, I'm not here to argue of the merits of the SIPA account. You know, I mean, there's some good things that have come out of that account. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Questions for former Representative DeCarria? Ken, do you know, I don't know the answer to this. Is 45% of 1.25% enough to fund all the major maintenance? I don't think it is.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, no. Mr. Chairman, it strikes me that major maintenance is 144 million. Now, Mr. Chairman, you're going off of my old brain, but it's more than the 90 million.
So the legislature's making up the gap.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So as I guess I'm confused because we're going to pay for education one way or the other. I don't understand why we would continue to dedicate 45% and 1.25% and keep this complication in our chart of accounts. I'd like to see the SIPA go away, frankly. It's just another coffee can. But tell me why that you feel that there should be a dedicated stream of revenue when all the evidence is every year there's been a deficit, we've made it up.
Well, Mr. Chairman, not always. I mean, in some of that. And when co-lease bonus money was coming in, you know, that was paying for capital construction, and that was dedicated. But Mr. Chairman, when that went in the legislature, there was a conversation that went on at that point. It said, we know this isn't a permanent solution to this. At some point, we're going to have to come up with a more permanent solution instead of co-lease bonus money. But that's the nature of the legislature. You know, as long as it's working, nobody's interested in changing it. But when it does change, that's when it becomes important that you do it. And Mr. Chairman, I guess what I'm saying is it would just be nice if we had the revenue stream going in that would fund K-12 education wholly, so that we're not always talking about structural deficits or having to transfer money from somewhere else. I mean, it is a cost, and we know that it's what comes up, and so it just seems like it would be better for me if we had that dedicated revenue stream that could fund K-12 education.
Thank you. Anything from the committee? Anything? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Further agency or further public comment?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tate Mullen. I'm the Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. I'll make my comments brief. Candy Carey did a great job of outlining our very concerns. Knowing that major maintenance is underfunded, and then having a dedicated source of revenue for major maintenance instead of drawing from the LSRA and the discussion about structural deficits. Understand the necessity to clean up. That is quite the coffee can balance that we've got going on there. So appreciate the intent of the bringer of the bill, but we would like to see a dedicated source of revenue to fund major maintenance, even though that right now it is underfunded. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. Any other ideas besides SIPA and 1.25% and 45% dedicated revenue?
I leave that to the minds of the legislature. I like the idea that Ken had floated in terms of just directing that into the SFP if we're going to look at eliminating these accounts to at least have some form of dedicated revenue flowing in. But I'll leave that to you, gentlemen.
Anything else? Committee? All right, thank you. Any further comments from the public? Anything further? I'll close public comment, and it's up to the committee.
Move the bill.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion,
Just some questions, Mr. Chairman.
please.
Based on the comments from the Education Association and school boards, and what this chart says, I just want to clarify my interpretation of the chart. So the revenue sources currently for the school capital construction account are the federal mineral royalties and used to be co-lease bonuses. Those go into the school capital construction account. We are going to eliminate the school capital construction account, take the current revenues and their money in there, and put it in the SFP. What happens to the future federal mineral royalties that would have gone into the capital construction account? Where do those go? Do they go to SIPA or do they go to the SFP? According to the chart, it looks like they go to the SFP, but there seems to be a difference in interpretation on that.
Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. Chairman, that source of revenue will always flow into the school foundation program. for those federal mineral royalties that are obligated. And as they come up and go down, as we know, a lot of those royalties are driven by price. Those will just continually flow into the school foundation program.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So to follow up and maybe to counteract, I mean, I understand what they're saying. They want more money out of the SIPA directly into the school foundation account, but there is a direct source of revenue with the enactment of this bill into the school foundation account, one of them being federal mineral royalties. Is that fair? Is that accurate?
What, Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, why are they, could restate your question, please?
Is this statement true? Future federal mineral royalties that the state receives will automatically go into the school foundation account.
That's correct.
And isn't it also true then that that is a dedicated source of revenue, of course, based on market volatility, but it is a dedicated source of revenue?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. It'll be one source of dedicated into the school foundation program account.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's it.
And then just to carry that forward, the 33% of state royalties is dictated by the Constitution. And there's no reason to put it in an SLMRA, just flow it into the SFP as if we didn't have enough acronyms today.
Yeah, so purposes of my clarity and clarity for understanding what this bill does and how our school funding works, the statement that there is not a dedicated source of revenue to the school foundation account is not an accurate statement.
Madam Senator Kensky.
Please.
Senator Nethercott, that is an accurate statement. There is a dedicated source that flows in there. Now,
Right.
Madam Chairman, I should say with one clarification, once they go into the school foundation program account, those are available for expenditures, anything on the K through 12. But currently they're dedicated for school capital construction. We're just flowing them in there. They can be used for on the model, on major maintenance, new capital construction, any of those. Once those funds go into the school foundation program, they could be expended on any of those three items. But it is another dedicated source of money that flows right to the school foundation program account.
I believe there are, so this refers to additional revenues. There's already revenues flowing into the SFP. That'd be another chart. We'd have to get the other chart.
And the point of that is to correct the statements that I heard from the education folks. And I want to make sure that stays corrected.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, and the correction is the statement that there's not a flow into the SFP.
That the school foundation program account does have dedicated flows of revenue. Whether or not you think it's enough or a reliable source of funding is a different question. But to allege or to state that it does not is incorrect and should not be restated.
Senator Chensky, Senator Nethercott, that is absolutely correct.
Okay, Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I think what they were saying was it's not a reliable source and it's not enough. You know, they maybe misstated it that we didn't have a dedicated source, but I think they're saying we don't have enough source and they don't feel like it's reliable, which they may be right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
We're looking at just under $1 billion surplus in the school foundation program account this year that's coming in. And so I had staff, I didn't bring it here because it's a prolonged budget discussion, actually take this bill, profile it into the white rod, this biennium, next biennium, and this biennium out. And I didn't bring that. It shows, at least for the next two bienniums, that the entire school foundation program account with capital construction, with major maintenance, and with funding the block grant, the model, the resource block grant, is solvent. We get out 3 bienniums. We have a small deficit there. What we'll do is what we've always done is that will probably come out of the LSRA at that point in time. At that point in time, it's also profiled that the LSRA would have approximately $2 billion in it. In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, as part of the grand scheme, and I think it's important that people understand, this just wasn't a one-off for the appropriation and cap fan. This is it's a kind of a global direction that we're trying to go. This ties right in with what we call the reserve account bill. And what that'll effectively do is buffer the common school permanent land fund. It will actually generate more revenue. And if we prospectively look back, the state treasurer's office and RVK had we done that 5 years ago, that would have generated about another $60 million that would have flowed right into the school foundation program account. By moving this program in here, it consolidates that, and it's a dedicated source of funding for schools. So it's all of these things working in concert to get to this issue that we've debated for years and years. We don't have a structural deficit in K through 12 education right now. And at least for the next 2 bienniums, it looks like we're probably up. But if we do all these other things that are anticipated, that are in the works at some process, we may be out 3 bienniums that we have absolutely no structural deficit in K through 12. That's what we're trying to do, is figure out how to fund everything that we have on the school foundation side. And I guess that's the big picture. This is a piece of it.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I think what the schools are trying to say is that due to the current administration not issuing drilling permits, that they're worried for the future of these revenue sources. Federal mineral royalties are going to drop off because we won't have production out of federal minerals. State royalties are going to drop off a little bit maybe, but the big one is that federal mineral royalties is going to drop because the current administration won't allow us to drill now, and that'll take 3 to 5 years to catch up with us, and there will be a decrease in their income. So they're worried about that and not having us do something about that, but just saying that that isn't reliable source of income.
So Senator Anderson, we're already there. I mean, the SCCA is just empty. We've had to backfill construction now for, I think, 2 biennia at least. Yeah. Okay. Anything else for Senator Hicks? All right, thank you. Anything else for the committee before we work the bill? Any motions from the committee? We had a move. We moved the bill.
We moved the bill.
Anything further discussion? Question? Call the roll, please.
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Garu.
Aye.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salzar. And Chairman Kinski.
Aye.
5 ayes. You pass.
Thank you. Okay, the next matter is this education fund transfer, and this is a simple little bill, we hope. Senator Hicks?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I'll just walk you through this, but again, I need to give you a little bit of history of this. So the Education Trust Fund was enacted by the 1991 legislature. At that time, they set up an account and did not do an appropriation into it. The original account, as specified, was for eligibility for proposed program grants authorized and submitted annually to the Wyoming school districts and the Wyoming community colleges and the University of Wyoming. So it was set up as to fund innovation grants. They had a little bit of a windfall in 1997, and the state received, through a settlement through the Express Pipeline Partnership in 1996, $5 million. And so they deposited that $5 million in there in 1997, Mr. Chairman. So this count goes back to 91. And I've handed out for you, you've got this Chapter 22 Wyoming Education account. And I want to lead you, if you'll pull that out. So account created 91, transferred $5 million in there in 1997.
I don't have it.
So it'll say Chapter 22 Wyoming Education Trust Fund. Mr. Chairman, does everybody have that?
Yeah.
So what I would do is ask you to look down at subsection C. And when I read this, I was a little astounded, seeing how I've been in the legislature for 13 years now, and I've never seen this. And so Subsection C says, until the balance of the account established under subsection A of this section reaches $50 million, the governor shall annually recommend to the legislature specific revenue sources for a $10 million appropriation. Been here 13 years and I've never seen a governor come in and ask for an appropriation for the Education Trust Fund account that's been in place since 1991. So obviously, governors and previous legislatures never followed through what the legislative intent was. And so over the years, this has been modified and changed, as I talked about. In the 1997 session laws, they struck out university and community colleges. They further amended in 2005. This thing's been amended 2008, and then 2021. So it's evolved for what its purpose is and what it's utilized. So what the bill does, Mr. Chairman, and you also have, and I'm not going to go over it, you should have a memo from, I believe, LSO staff talking about how much money's in there, what's in the balance, and it's located in Pool A, and all of that. I'm not going to go into that. So the intent of the bill is to take that $5 million that's been sitting out there, and they have been utilizing it, and this is the evolutionary process. It's now set for innovative grants that go out to school districts can participate in those and submit applications to the Department of Education for these innovative grants. It's been utilized. I think I supplied you with a memo that shows the level of utilization by that. I think there's a balance of $441,000 in there for these innovation grants. I think the innovation grants is a great idea. Again, we find ourselves with another little pot of money sitting over here that's not doing what it could do. Reckon our discussion about trying to fully fund education and all these other things. What the bill does is just captures the $5 million and rolls it into the corpus of the Common School Permanent Land Fund, which we will derive a much higher rate of return on than we do in Pool A right now. So if we just want to, again, try to enhance our revenues, we could leave the statutory language alone and say they can still fund innovative grants out of this program. It's just going to come out of the school foundation program. So it's just moving funds where they'll work better for us. Doesn't eliminate the programs. We can leave the programs there. The source of funding would then just be the school foundation program if they want the programs. But it will ultimately result, moving from Pool A, Senator Carew knows that, being on CAPFIN, and into the corpus of the trust, would actually generate more money if we wanted to dedicate, again, if we want to dedicate a source of funding for this, we have the mechanism to do it. Why wouldn't we generate more money to fund this by just consolidating this account? All the bill does is move it into the corpus. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
This simple little bill, Mr. Chairman. So we've got $4.9 million, maybe $5 million. We don't quite sure. Why are we only transferring out 200, 300, and 400 and some thousand a year?
Mr. Chairman, with the way the grant program is set up, they can only spend the earnings off of the account for the grant program, so they can't go into the corpus. And so those earnings sit in another account, an expenditure account, again, a little more complication in our system. And so that balance is just what's in there for innovative grants through the Department of Education.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is not shutting down this account. It's just pulling the funds out of it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I want to go back, if the committee moves the bill, I want to verify that we don't want to, I'm pretty sure it doesn't. It's been a long couple of days and I hadn't had a good chance to review this, but the intent was, and I'm pretty sure it's in here when I reviewed the bill the first time, we're just moving the funds, we're not repealing any of the programs.
Anything else, Senator Anderson?
No.
Anybody else on the committee? Okay, thank you, Senator Hicks. We'll open it up for agency comment.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I guess I need to come back and I do need to correct myself. I think 106 is the actual program. And that was not my intent, just to leave the innovative grants program available. So So that's when you turn over and you do look at the repealer there. I need to go back and check that. 101 and 102 is the establishment of the counts. 106 and 107, I believe, are the grants program.
I'm not sure why you'd keep it around if you take all the money, but it's your bill, so.
So, Mr. Chairman, well, if they want to keep the programs, they're still there to utilize. If for some reason they wanted to keep the programs.
Okay,
I don't think you have to eliminate the programs. That's not the purpose of the bill. The bill is to move money and consolidate into an area that'll generate higher rate of return.
okay. Anything else? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I am more confused now. I understand on page 4 and 5 of the introduction of the bill that it's a transfer of funds from the Wyoming Education Trust Fund to the common school account within the and providing for an effective date. It sounded like we were getting rid of the Wyoming Education Trust Fund, but we're not, huh?
No, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what it does, and that's what it was intended to do. So my recollection, let me pull it up here because I have it.
So
right here.
what I think is happening is he said he doesn't intend to repeal the program, but then realized there is a repealer for the program in there.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Chairman, 106 would be appropriate because that's the distribution of the trust funds available to public schools, so there would be no more distributions under the trust fund.
okay,
107, innovative program grants, applications selected by the Department of Education, districts, distribution report on grant awards. So I think you also have to repeal that component because it's tied back to the trust fund, and we're eliminating that. That being said, Mr. Chairman, there is nothing that would preclude the Department of Education for still issuing these grants through the school foundation program.
and you're flowing the money back to the CSLP corpus?
What's that?
You're flowing this 5 million back to the Common School Land Fund corpus?
Correct.
Okay,
Because it operates as a corpus right now, and they only spend the interest off of it, it made sense to me to put it in the corpus of the Common School Perm Land Fund and continue to draw interest off of it at a higher rate.
okay. Senator Nethercutt? No? Anything else for Senator Hicks before I open it up? All right, Senator Hicks, thank you. Agency comment? Hearing none, public comment? Please, Marguerite, hello.
Thing is a little more complicated than you think.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. I had a question, and hearing the explanation, the repealers, I did look up on this, and it looked like it repealed everything, including things that had been repealed before. So if you repeal a repealer, I don't know what that does. But anyway, just sort of a question that I know just that much about trusts, but the money that was, the 5 million or so that's in the corpus for the trust came from direct appropriations? Did any come from donations? If money is given in trust, can you take that money and put it in another trust? I'm just wondering about the ability to transfer that intact. And also that, so the income that was made available for these applications for grants, and I haven't had a chance to check with the WDE or anything about who's getting the money, how they're applying, but I would assume that all the income that is not used reverts to the trust. What happens to that? Does it just sort of hang around? I would hope it's getting, if they're not using everything, I'm hoping that's in some kind of an interest-bearing account or something. So, and I confess as the first, I vaguely remember the creation of this 30 odd years ago, but I confess, it's a mystery to me, but I assume it's been doing good things, but I just wonder about the messiness of transferring the corpus over to something else and what happens to the unspent interest. So just curiosity there, how that's going to be managed. And so, I guess one other thing I had a question about. So if you combine the two corpuses together, then you're going to segregate out the income from this particular fund so that it can be sent over to the Department of Education to be used for that, or does it go into some other large, other undifferentiated account? So. That's all.
Anything else? I can't answer any of those, Marguerite, I cannot answer a single one of those questions, but I'll see if staff can.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
So the fund was given $5 million in trust that was inviolate. That's the corpus. Investments are made. Those investments are placed into another investment fund account, which is what the grants are given out of. But how did the corpus of the fund get down to 4 million this past year? Because it's been, so if you look at that memo, it shows the trust fund ending cash balance, 5 million, 18, 19, 5 million, 20, 5 million. That, it should always say that. And then in 22, it dips below 5. And then you provide, I think Senator Hicks provided an email from staff that showed the account balance is 4 million. So it dropped about $1 million. Do we know how and why that happened?
Please.
This money's invested. You're an asset. Even U.S. government. This is food. It's really invested. If we held 30-year treasury last year, we lost 13%. And so, if money is invested in the oil, and it's not uncommon when we have big recessions and downturns in the stock market. Plus, you're figuring like 26 million a day and all that. That's flush. Very interesting to account for that. One of the corpus and one is the expenditure. We do this with just about everyone. One is the corpus. Higher education, and that's why you see the students. I asked that same. Roughly, I asked.
Okay, we're kind of running out of time. Let's go ahead. Let's lay this back until our next meeting, which, not our next meeting, that's ARPA and CapCon. Yeah, so I'll have to look at the schedule to see, if, Linda, if you can just show on the announcement that it's going to be the continuation of this bill. Okay, and then you'll have to notify staff. We're going to have to lay back the executive session.
Mr. Chairman?
So please.
Senator, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, is that going to give you enough time? I know you had some questions as well about some facets to this. I'll give you time to. Right. Okay. Okay, so we just,
Yeah.
okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. All right. We've got to get up to the floor. I'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you. So.